Hello, welcome to Geekatplay Studio. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to animate multiple objects to give them random motion. This isn't very hard to do. With 2 or 3 things, you can create a keyframe and motion and animate them, but when you have a lot of objects, say 40, 80, or 100 or more, it becomes tedious and kind of time-consuming. But there is a little trick we want to show you so you can animate them faster and in an easier way. You can use the same tip for explosions and similar kind of thing. But let's first create our object right here. And for now, we'll just create a sphere. Let's make it a little bit smaller, because we don't want 100 Death Stars flying all around. For now, we'll just pretend it's a fly. Now, I just want to show you, Vue has a grid right here, and one square or cube is about 10 by 10 by 10 meters. So keep this in mind so that when we start putting numbers in, you have an idea of the distances when they scatter. So now let's select our sphere. And right here we have a button to duplicate or scatter and replicate objects. So we'll just right click and that will bring us this menu, scatter, replicate objects. We'll click on generate and let's generate 40 objects. Here we have move objects between, and we have resize objects. This is useful if we have debris or other kinds of objects, but for now we'll disable it. And let's enable rotation right now. And the minimum angle, well, let's just set that in a second. And right here we have our position. And we know that the mark is 0, 0. So with this being 0, 0 and 10, 10, 10, we'll just set this minimum position at 0, 0, 0. And the maximum is 10, 10, 10. And they'll all just be located in that area, and we'll press OK, and now we have 40 objects. Okay, one thing I want to point out to you, something. Okay, now let's just move this in a little closer. You can see that some objects kind of sink into the ground plane, and the reason why is because when you scatter objects, the position is taken from the center pivot point of the object, not from the bottom of the object, or the top or the side, so it's from the center point that it's located. So if you don't want your object sunk into the ground, you can drop the whole ground plane, or you can take the size of the object into account when you enter in your minimum Z value so that it doesn't fall below that ground level there. But I think in this situation we won't worry too much. Also, if you notice them all right here, it can get hard to select them all every time. You might miss one, but you don't want to put them in a group. When you scatter them, they'll all move around in the same motion instead of individualized random motion, which is nice for synchronized flying, but not what we want here. So instead we'll just create a new layer and put them all in that layer, and then when we need to work with them, we can just click on the layer, and there you go. And we have them all selected. Now let's work with our animation. If your animation timeline is not open, just click on this button. It might open the animation wizard, but you can just close that. All we need is just the timeline. Here is your auto keyframe. If it's not enabled, you can manually add a keyframe, or you can just enable auto keyframe. But for the first frame, we need to create a keyframe. So while all your objects are selected, add a keyframe so it will add additional. So let's just move this ahead a half second, and we'll right click on this button again. Now the one thing you need to pay attention here is to make sure you click on use selected objects. By default it is set on generate objects. So if you don't select this, your flies are going to proliferate, just like they do in real life. You'll get 40 or more flies for each of the 40 objects you already have, which is a serious infestation. Here's 0, 0, 0 minimum, and the maximum we'll have at 10, 10, 10. And maybe let's just add some rotation to them. It doesn't really matter for when they're spheres, but you might want some for the flies. Okay, now let's click OK, and you see that there's some emotion applied to them, so we'll see them start flying around. And we'll move another half second. Our keyframe will be automatic, but if you want, you can add it manually again. And we'll scatter the object again, making sure to switch to use selected objects. But let's just disable rotation, and we won't use that. We have move objects between, and now we have 0, 0, 0 again for the maximum, maybe in this corner, but there might be something interesting for the flies, and we'll set the maximum at 2, 2, 2, and maybe there's some honey there or rotting flesh. And now you see that they're all just rushing to that corner. Let's again move it a half second, but apparently what happened, you selected objects, and now we'll make that max position out there quite a bit farther, because whatever was in that corner turned out it wasn't very good, so they ran away. So now they run far away, far from this corner because it was so bad. Maybe a giant fly-eating zombie frog. There. And here's another half second. But flies, they're not really smart. They're kind of stupid. Maybe they forgot, what was that thing back there? Let's go check it out. So they come back a little closer. But again, it's that zombie frog. It's so tempting, yet so deadly. So let's select here. And in our minimum position, let's put it at -5. -5. And Z is 0, so we don't go under the ground plane. And the maximum position is 15, 15, 15. So they'll just spread a little more around, and it will make it a little more chaotic. So they're going around, maybe they're going towards the camera, or you can have them passing the camera, just have them going all over the place. The camera, by the way, is just set at -10, so if you make it -15, they might fly over the camera. They probably will here. So again, another half second, scatter replicate, and use selected objects, and let's move them to 0, 0, 0, and again 10, 10, 10 in the maximum. Click OK, and maybe the last time you select move objects at maybe -20, and there we go, -25 I think, and that'll move past the camera in 0 so we don't go under, and the max is 20, 20, 20. So you can play around with these numbers however you want. You can just look and see the timing of it doesn't look right and change however you want, but you need to understand that the speed depends on the time and what distance they need to cover. So of course when you apply different speed over whatever amount of time, you get a different outcome. And one thing that's interesting to do is to apply motion blur. For now, let's take a look at what we've got. You can see them all flying all over. If you used maybe 3 different sets of objects in their layers with different random motions applied, you could get an even more chaotic look. But now, when you render the motion, select broadcast quality here, and that will give you the motion blur I was talking to you about. A nice effect here. So now a final tip. We've been using these simple spheres because they are easy to work with. But for the final render, we'll just select the layer, so all the objects are selected, and we'll replace them all. So go right here and we'll select that fly, and there you go. They have a bunch of flies flying around something interesting. And let's click on the camera to preview again. And you can see tons of flies just going all over. Maybe it's that zombie frog or maybe your kid's popsicle, but they're flying around like crazy here. You can add rotation, you can add more motion, play with the time, and maybe extra sets of layers and get it exactly how you want. Questions or need some resources or more tutorials, please visit us at www